right, hello. This is David Raine and Chike Evans with No Lies Detected. We have a distinguished guest today. We have Marcus Sebastian Mason, who is the chairman of the Biden-Harris African American Leadership Council, and he's an advisor, is an advisor to the Biden-Harris campaign, because we're still advising, I'm sure. Thanks for coming, Marcus. We really appreciate you here, man.
No, thanks for having me, David. Thanks for inviting me, Chike. It's good to be here.
Absolutely.
Is it still morning? No, afternoon. It's morning somewhere, though.
It's morning somewhere. Morning in my head still.
Look, I'm from the West Coast, so it's still morning.
Right. So first, man, we just want to say congratulations. We're all extremely pleased about the election results. It's a chance for America to regain its soul and move in a direction of cleaning and brightening up our lives again. So we're really psyched about that, and we're thankful that you had a hand in that. And so we'd love to hear, more about the advising that you did for the Biden-Harris campaign.
And look, David, then Vice President Joe Biden entered this race because he truly was battling and fighting for the soul of this nation. And what really pushed him over the edge and convinced them that he really needed to run was first the work that he had done in the 2018 midterm elections to help Democrats take back the House of Representatives and put Jim Clyburn in as Majority Whip and Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. But the seminal moment that really pushed him into the race was back in Charlottesville, when those poor folks were assaulted by white supremacists, run over, a young woman lost their life, and Donald Trump said that there were some really good people on both sides, right?
Yeah.
That's BS. That's BS, and you have to stand up and confront BS when you see it. The now president-elect is famous for saying no malarkey. And that was just a load of malarkey, and you have to stand up and confront those things when you see it. A lot of the work that I did, and I could not have done it without my teammate, Congressman Cedric Richmond, who I often refer to as the chief strategy officer of the campaign. And look, we were with Joe Biden before a lot of people believed in him. And Congressman Richmond would always say, and he was famous for saying it, you can't govern if you can't win. And back during the primary, when there were 17, 18, even up to 20 candidates in the race, even candidates who were friends of ours, we looked across the landscape and we looked at the success that we had in 2018, where then Vice President Biden did just about everything that we asked him to do for protecting our vote, which is the super PAC that was founded and formed up and inspired by Jim Clyburn. He went to state after state. He sent the message of uniting the country as opposed to dividing the country. And so at that moment, that's when the congressman and I realized that, oh my God, I think we have a presidential candidate here. This is somebody who can really win the next race and defeat Donald Trump. And that was a singular focus, defeating Donald Trump. Now, of course, the primaries present their own set of challenges. Most folks don't know that the then VP had been running for president since 1988 and had never won Iowa, had never won the Iowa caucuses. Not of any fault of his own, but because the demographic never matched up with his message, never really matched up with his message. And so that didn't change in this primary either. And we took a beating in Iowa, in the cold and in the snow and in the caucuses, which is a very unique entity of itself. And then on up to New Hampshire, where we took a beating in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But look, Congressman Richmond had a vision, and we talked about it all the time, that we will not let states whose demographic is similar to the color in the snow that sits on the ground in their respective state pick the president of the United States, pick the nominee for the Democratic Party. our thought was always that diverse communities had to speak. Communities of color had to speak. Black men, Black women, Black families, Latinos, they had to speak first. And that wasn't going to happen until the Nevada caucuses and the Nevada primary. And so it was, that night, first night in Iowa, that the congressman looked at the VP and said, look, we got to get out of here. Let's beat them to the punch. And if they're going to run us out of town, let's jump out front and make it a parade. Right. So that's the smart thing to do. People paused and people hesitated. And Amy Klobuchar beat us to that particular punch. And she got run out of town, run out of Iowa, but got out in front and made it a parade. When presented with that same opportunity in New Hampshire, the VP took it and left New Hampshire that night, flew down to Columbia, South Carolina. An event had already been set up for him by Simone Sanders and some of the other folks, some of the other African-American members of the team on the campaign team. And they set up this great event. And the VP or the then VP, I have to get used to calling him president-elect. The president-elect really feels at home in South Carolina. He spends a lot of time there. He goes to the churches. He knows the community, and the community there knows him. And so when we got him to Columbia, I saw the look on his face, and he wasn't necessarily the happy warrior that we love for him to be. But after he got into the room and felt the energy, and felt and saw the diverse crowd, and saw the people who loved him, you began to literally see the wind come beneath his wings, and he almost grew taller.
Yeah.
As he walked into that room and he stood and he absorbed the energy, and you watched a smile just slowly and gradually creep across his face. And then he got up, he delivered a great speech, delivered a great message. And it was at that moment that the campaign had been jump-started again. And so the strategy was to make it through Nevada. We had to at least come in second. And we accomplished our objective coming in second so that we could roll into South Carolina, hopefully gain the support of the majority whip, Jim Clyburn, who has been the kingmaker, the Democratic kingmaker.
He's awesome.
Since 2008, right?
Yeah.
Since 2008. And he has, when he put his hand on Barack Obama and endorsed him, put his hand on Hillary Clinton and endorsed her. And look, he put his hand on then Vice President Joe Biden. The two men had a very long and close relationship, and they spent a lot of time together talking about a number of things, whether it be family and children and the love of their family and children and their wives, or if it was political things or legal legislative things or civil rights issues like Brown v. Board of Education. Most people don't know that the two cases that made up Brown v. Board, one was in South Carolina and the other was in Delaware, right? Wow. And so that was sort of a marriage that began before those two men had even met, brought them together and gave them some commonality. So when he came out just after the South Carolina debates the next day and said, I know Joe Biden and Joe Biden knows us and we know Joe Biden. Look, that was the equivalent of Jesus Christ to a Lazarus moment. And that lifted, again, South Carolina lifted him, what became the wind beneath his wings, and lifted that campaign. And that was the sweep on through Super Tuesday, the first Super Tuesday, then the second Super Tuesday, then the third Super Tuesday into the nomination. And so, we always tried to make sure, and Congressman Richmond always tried to make sure that communities of color were reflected in the campaign and participated in the campaign, but that communities of color would be those voters that would carry us through to the end. And I think, if anybody has ever heard Joe Biden speak, there was a point in 2018 where he gave a speech in a very small room in DC, and he said, I owe my career to the Black community. That's no hyperbole, right? And so fast forward until last Saturday night, 1 week ago, when he pounded on the podium and said, I owe my career to the Black community.
Yeah.
They were the wind beneath my wings. And so that was a strategy that could only come, uniquely from the minds of people of color and be implemented by folks of color.
Yeah. Wow. It's funny you said that just before we came on. It was scrolling through Facebook, and there was the first 2 female indigenous congresswomen that were just elected. There's a picture, and it's like to see a white man do this was just awesome. He's on one knee, holding one of the congresswoman's hands and just smiling and looking at it. Like, what white man would have the humbleness to do that to an indigenous woman? That's, it's just like you can tell. And Delaware is on righteous ground. Like, Delaware basically was built on righteous ground. So it was just really touching. And, I showed B, and we just looked at it, and it was like, this dude is righteous, man. Like, just to make that move. What white man, like, in the political business or arena would do that? And and I think that's what makes you trust that he is what he says he is. Yeah.
What you see with the president-elect is what you get. 100%. He is a good and decent man. He, as a politician, look, he is one of the most tactile that I've ever seen. There was a point during Jim Clyburn's famous fish fry, Majority Whip's famous fish fry, and if you have never witnessed it, this year's fish fry was a sight to behold. I got reports that it was viewed as far away as Japan, as Tokyo, Japan, on their networks, and it was an incredible thing for this African American man to have a gathering so large and with every presidential candidate. It was one of those things that you just would not and could not refuse that particular invitation. But this righteous and humble man who we are talking about, when he was there, he was the biggest name in the business at the time, but he was the one who sat back and let everybody go and make their speech, and then talk to all the people who were attending. But then afterwards, in what was probably, David, I would say probably about an 82-degree night at 11 o'clock.
Wow. Yeah.
He waited and he shook almost every hand until the last person was gone, touched almost every person until the last person was gone. And and the congressman and I stood back and it's like, it's hot. It's hot. And the heat coming off the engines from these SUVs here doesn't make it any cooler.
That's
and
right.
The heat coming off these big fish fryers over here with all this grease doesn't make it any cooler either. But didn't matter to Joe Biden. He stood there and he shook every hand. I guess it must be the Pilates he's doing. I need to try that because look, I'm a chubby guy, so I probably need to do some Pilates and get some of this weight off me and get back to my fighting athlete's form.
Right.
But he's a good man who stood there and shook every hand. Being in a pandemic had to frustrate him more than anyone else, because if you've ever seen him, he will shake a hand, he will kiss a baby, he'll pull you in close and give you the big bear hug, much like Bill Clinton used to do.
Yeah.
And he means it because he wants to know you, he wants to see you, he wants to understand your pain, understand what you're going through. And he's a man who's been through a lot of pain himself. So when he's doing that, he is really trying to connect with you.
Yeah, it's good. You just said it about the pandemic, because part of that strategy, you guys had to get, and everyone around him had to get pretty creative, because this is not only civil unrest, pandemic, and all everyone is like, a lot of people are struggling right now, unemployment, unable to eat. Like, there's something else going on besides, we need a new president. People are like, I can't eat. Like, I'm not feeding my family. So to go and campaign in that environment had to at times be hostile, tense, scary, And then, like you said, his idea is he likes to look you in the eye close. He likes to touch you. He likes to, be near and not be able to do that, but still try to affect people from a distance, what was
Yeah,
that?
no, it was campaigning through a pandemic is probably the toughest thing that I think any of us have ever had to do. I've run campaigns through civil unrest. I ran my first campaign as a 21-year-old through the civil unrest after the Rodney King beating. That was tough, right? Because you had to deal with safety issues. But running a pandemic, and I take my hat off to the entire campaign team for having to reimagine, not just as you said, running a campaign through a pandemic, but also running a campaign through civil unrest, not in just one city, but in multiple cities, and continuing to get that message out and continuing to drill that message home, and then to turn those voters out in the most creative way that I've seen in my entire time this business, and really to get the African American community to do something that we really don't do.
Right.
Right? Voting in person is cultural for us. Our ancestors and our civil rights leaders, like John Lewis and like Mr. Lewis and Mr. Clyburn, were beaten. They spent time in jail so that we could have the right to vote in person. Voting by mail had never been imagined back when they were going through this, and so for us, it was a rite of passage and rite of privilege for our community to go and vote. Sometimes people would get dressed up to go and vote, right? Yeah. And so to convince them that culturally, right here, right now, in this, what is the most, every election is important, but this was the most consequential election of my lifetime, of your lifetime, of our collective lifetimes, right? Because we were facing the potential failure of the American experiment. We were facing the potential failure of our democracy, right? We didn't all have a hand in forming it. We didn't all have a hand in shaping it, or an equitable hand in shaping it. But over time, we gained that equity, we gained that hand, but we were facing the end of it. And there are actors outside of this nation who would have loved to have seen that. We have not reached the age of 300, which the Chinese believe is when a country becomes a civilization. We're on the cusp. And if we had had to be faced with another 4 years of Donald Trump, number one, I was going to be a Mexican because I was going to Cabo and I was going to stay there, and I would have said, mi nombre es Marcos Mason. Sebastian would have turned to Santiago, or maybe Sebastian.
Right.
Look, Doc, I was going to Cabo. I was taking Chrissy and Gracie and everybody else with me, and then I was going to help build the wall from the other side.
Right. It's like,
sounds like a good plan.
Hey, man. And so look, I staked everything, and I used to say to people, and there are lots of my friends who've heard me say this, that I bet the future of my children, born and unborn, on Joe Biden. And look, I said that before Chrissy was pregnant, before my wife was pregnant, and this campaign had been so long, and I've been saying that for so long, that my wife got pregnant, my wife gave birth, and Grace was 1 year old, and then the election happened. So
perfect timeline.
Right. So the unborn had become born.
Right.
by the time this election had come, and it had just become so much more critical, as she was born, because we were in the midst of a pandemic that is not getting worse. I mean, it's not getting better. It is only getting worse.
Right.
And that's because the current occupant at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue refused to accept the reality of this virus. Instead, he wanted to demagogue, and he wanted to be a xenophobe and call it the China virus. Look, I don't care if the damn virus came from Uzbekistan. Solve the problem, fix the problem, kill the virus, solve for X, save the people. It is not about you. It is not about me. It is about the collective we. But he can't quite get past himself. He can't quite get past his desire to be a demagogue, or his desire to be a dictator, or to, in my mind, he fashions himself as a modern day Hitler.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
I want to back up a little bit. Back to the picking of then Senator Harris to become VP-elect Harris. Talk about the decision making and what you guys arrived at in order to achieve that.
There was a lot of, first of all, Senator Harris, VP-elect Harris, shattered the glass ceiling that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton tried to, attempted to shatter in 2016, but was denied by the Electoral College. Fewer than 90,000 votes over 3 states, but won the popular vote. Senator Harris, who I've known since she was a local prosecutor, is a phenomenal woman. There's when the poem was written, it envisioned her. And I recall giving her an award when I was the chair of the African American Lobbyists Association, WGRG. I recall giving her an award at our 10 Cup Awards dinner, celebrating those who advocate for diversity. And I took the South Carolina state motto and kind of flipped it, or not flipped it, but kind of extemporized on it. That said ad astra aspera. But, I kind of gave a Latin phrase and said that while she breathes, we can hope. And I meant that. I meant that about her. The decision-making that went into it, look, the primary, it was a hard-fought primary, and there was a lot that went back and forth. But when you are picking a running mate, you have to focus on who is going to be a good teammate, who is going to be the last person in the room that you can trust to help make a decision with you that's best for the country. And given the talented women who were all being looked at for the position, Kamala Harris was number one. Because she had that depth and breadth of experience. She had been a local prosecutor, but she had also been the Attorney General of the largest state, most populous state in the country, but the largest AG's office in the country. And so that meant that she understood how to manage a large group of people and to set an agenda and to move that agenda forward and to move an equitable agenda forward. And so when you look at from a political perspective, the person who can reach the demographic that you need, that's one. But the person who can that's two. But the person who can co-lead with you, one. But the person who can help you reach certain demographics, that's two. If it's a choice between a head and a heart decision, you sit down, you reconcile them both. And that's what then Vice President Biden did. And that's how he came to select then Senator Harris. But there was also a personal relationship there for him because she and his son Beau had a great relationship. They were friends. And what most people don't know is Vice President Biden actually went out to California to nominate then AG Harris for her Senate run in front of the California Democratic Convention. So that's just a little bit of political history that most people don't know, and to understand that connection that those two have that allowed them to survive the slings and arrows that you have to throw at each other over the course of a primary election.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt, I would imagine, that, like you just said, the slings and arrows, she's not a yes woman. So, and any president needs to trust that he has people around him that will question his decisions, that will, give advice from, a place of like, well, no, why don't you think about this, as opposed to yes, sir, like what the dude there now has,
Exactly.
Exactly. So I think
everybody kowtows like, oh, yes, sir, Mr. Trump. It's like, okay,
yeah,
please.
yeah.
But no, she you know, we call that speaking truth to power.
Mhm.
And, you know, she has always been one who could speak truth to power and wasn't shy about doing it, but did it in a way that brought people together and that brought people, you know, around to a line of thinking. I remember many years ago, Bill Clinton said that true leadership is staking out a point beyond the curve of popular thinking and bringing everyone around to your point of view. And that's one of the unique gifts that she has. It's one of the unique gifts that the president-elect has. And to have two people like that, to be the 46th president of the United States and the 47th vice president of the United States, two people like that in the executive branch, look, that means we're going to get a lot of work done for this country. We're going to help a lot of people, and we're going to save a lot of lives as they come in together and help end this pandemic.
Yeah, excellent, man.
So earlier, before we actually started, we went live. We were talking about speaking truth and it being important that people hear the truth no matter where they hear it from. Let's talk about the transition and how dynamic you have to be in order to have this transition happen without the help from the other side, as it's supposed to be. I think from what I'm seeing, from what I can view from the media standpoint, you guys are doing a dynamic job just simply formulating together without any assistance. Talk about that a little bit.
Look, first of all, let's talk about, in the perfect circumstances and perfect instances, how difficult it is to conduct the peaceful transfer of power from one person to the next and from one party to the next. Imagine being a trapeze artist with no net, and imagine being on that platform and swinging down and being thrown into the air, and while you're flipping, you're praying that somebody on the other side is going to catch you. That's the American people who are doing the flipping and the praying because their government is up in the air, flipping and somersaulting in the air, waiting on the other person to catch them, right? Now, with this particular administration and the games that they're playing right now, the American public is about to be pushed. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have to extend their rope and swing over and grab it and grab us all before we hit the ground, because remember, there is no safety net.
Right.
Right. And so that's the complexity of what's going on. Each day that ticks by that the president-elect and the vice president-elect don't receive the daily intelligence brief is a day that bad actors can creep up and do some harm. Right. We are still a world that is filled with bad actors. We are still that bright and shining star, as imperfect as we are, still that bright and shining star that people want to stop. And so not giving the incoming administration access to the resources that they need to vet their cabinet, access to the resources that they need to vet the day one staff, access to the secure telephone lines that they will need to converse with world leaders and to have those conversations with them, access to the translators that they will need to bring those folks in and translate the messages so that everything is done properly, consistent with protocol. Every day that is held back is a day that the country is placed in more jeopardy than it should be, whether it be from a domestic policy standpoint or a foreign policy standpoint or a military policy perspective. Every day that's delayed just because of ego. And look, and it is not, I once thought that it was unprecedented, but I was actually corrected, because they said, it actually happened between the Clinton and W. Bush transition, back when Florida was being contested. But I will submit this, very different elections. Then we were talking about one state and we were talking about hanging chads. In this particular election, we've already won 306 electoral votes. More votes, more popular votes than any other president in
Right.
history.
Ever. Yeah.
Right? Ever. Back then, we were talking about 75 votes. So at a certain point, you have to say, and the Republican enablers in Congress also have to say, hey guys, look, the analytics say that there is no way in hell that you are going to come back. Give them the keys, let them at least start the car up. Because at the end of the day, if they don't catch you, we're all in trouble. We are all in trouble if this transition isn't as seamless as it could possibly be. But look, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are both leaders. And so my mother always told me, son, even if you're unsure, act as if. Even if you don't have all the resources, act as if. And right now, without the resources that are rightfully theirs, they are acting as if.
Joe, also it's a good thing that Joe Biden has been in the office before, as a VP. So even though this is a whole new world from when he and Obama were there, but at least he has experience. So the transition.
David, he knows where the bathrooms are, and he knows where the secret bathrooms are.
Exactly.
And he can go in and say, look, I know where they keep the toilet paper, quite frankly.
Right. And the coffee filters. He's got
and the coffee filters, and I know where all the light switches are. So look, when Donald Trump refused to invite him over, I just said to myself, so he's been there longer than you are there now currently. So take your eviction papers and walk. Look, there's a great sort of meme that's going around that said Donald Trump has lived the full 2020 experience.
Yes, the full COVID experience. Yep.
He lost his job, and he's about to be evicted.
Yep. I haven't seen that one yet. That's good. Very cool. Well, awesome.
So do you think that as far as transitions in the future moving forward, do you think that they will be more etched in policy just to circumvent what's going on now as opposed to a courtesy?
Look, I think they have to be etched in truth, right? And you have to confront lies wherever they present themselves, wherever they rear their ugly head. A transition, it has been the hallmark of our nation that we have a peaceful transition of power. This has been the first time that it has ever been this egregious, and it has ever been about a single personality. Look, I'm a former athlete, played D1 college ball, but also went to a high school that was just synonymous for winning. And the one thing that I learned was the scoreboard doesn't lie. It just doesn't. When you look up at the end of that fourth quarter and the final tick has fallen off that clock, and the score says 48-0, well, damn, whoever has the 48 won, right? The scoreboard can't lie. It's a number. Now, the loser may moan and groan about a play. They may moan and groan about a call that the ref made. But that scoreboard is the scoreboard. And at the end of the game, there is a winner and there is a loser. At the end of this election, there was a winner. It was Joseph Biden. There was a loser. It was Donald Trump. The peaceful transfer of power must begin. Despite the lies, despite the contesting and the false allegations of voter fraud, this nation does not engage in voter fraud. When you have Republican secretaries of state and election officials counting ballots saying, yeah, look, this guy won, right? Because they have the integrity to stand up and speak truth to power and say, this guy won. Cry what you want, cry if you want to. Your loser tears can only fill so much of a glass. Cry if you want to, but this election is valid. These ballots are valid. This man is now the president-elect of the United States. And so you have to do those things in order to continue to ensure the peaceful transfer of power, because the people who get up, and shower before they go to work, deserve that peaceful transfer of power. The people who get up and volunteer, by the way, a lot of these people who are counting and tabulating these ballots, Democrats and Republicans, are volunteers, right? They're not getting paid for this. They're volunteering because they love their country. And so
With
to
the
have
threat
someone
of their lives over their head.
with the
threat of
threat to their
over
lives,
their head.
yeah, threat to their lives over their head. And let's just talk about that. What kind of coward threatens a volunteer? What kind of coward does that? That is the most despicable type of coward that you can ever come across. And they really need to go and fall on their knees and ask their God for forgiveness, because you don't do those things to your fellow citizens. Don't demonize your fellow citizens. Don't threaten their lives. The Deputy Secretary of State of Georgia has to have security now, right?
Yeah.
Because he called an election fair and square. The Secretary of State for the state of Georgia has to have security because his life is being threatened, because they called an election fair and square, contrary to the rants of a minority, contrary to the rants of a sort of committed minority to want a different outcome. And look, we're not enemies in this country. We're Americans, and our opinions differ. Our opinions just differ. And that's fine, because in the differences, we can also find that there is more that keeps us together than that separates us. But we have to talk, and then we have to listen. And then we have to not question the person's motives, but question their opinion, question their point of view, but don't question their motive. That's where you go wrong, when you question somebody's motives. And so, look, I think that those supporters of the current president, and I know it's hard, loss is hard. Your fans sit in the stands and gripe. Look, I'm a Rams fan, and I'm a Lakers fan, and I'm a Dodgers fan. And, we win championships. It's what we do, right? And I know that with my friends and Congressman Richmond, I still joke about this. He's a New Orleans Saints fan. He's still sore about that one call or one non-call.
Right.
But what did he do? He accepted the result of the game. He may have bitched about that one call, and he may still bring it up every now and then, but the result of the game was the result of the game. Now, he did, gleefully delight in the Patriots beating us, but
Right.
we still got to the show.
I was just going to say, I do a lot of accepting as a Giants fan.
Yeah, because look, buddy,
I might have to accept tomorrow too.
Right,
but even in sports, right?
Right. Look,
I would say even in sports. I'm sorry. Even in sports, it's known as you have a penalty when you break the rules, right?
You have a penalty.
You don't follow by what's going on, right?
That's
so
right.
You have this person that's in office, and there's this thing called a transition that's happening, and he's not abiding by it. Isn't that likened to treason? Because now you're putting the country in a space where it's vulnerable, deliberately.
Yeah. Look, I think treason is one of those things that is punishable by death in this country when committed. And so I'm gonna push back from that particular precipice on calling it treasonous. But what I will call it is outright selfishness, because he is making this about him. This is the act of a selfish man. This is the act of someone who doesn't really like his followers. He's just glad that at all. Would never sit down and have a beer with them, would never invite the average one of them, would never sit and invite them out to any of the country clubs that he owns or any of the properties or hotels that he owns. He wouldn't do that. Now, the wealthy guys, yeah, he'd do that. But the average man, the one that takes a shower before he or she goes to work in the morning, he's not really rocking with them that way. He's not like, hey, let's you want a Miller Lite at my place? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't serve Miller Lite. I serve, something more highbrow. And I'm gonna charge you, I'm gonna charge you 45% more than it actually costs to buy this stuff anyway. But he's not gonna do that. That's not who he is. That's not in his DNA as a human. And so, look, it is very selfish to put the nation in peril. But that's who he is, right? That's exactly who he is. He's known about the deadliness and the seriousness of the coronavirus since hearing about it initially. He's known that it was a killer. He's known that it could be spread through the air. Did nothing. He's known that if left unchecked, it would spread faster than any other pandemic that we've ever faced. Selfishness, left it unchecked. What he did is called it the China virus, called it fake news. So in private, and you can find this in Bob Woodward's book, you can hear on if people don't listen to the news, there were actually some great ads by a super PAC Protecting Our Vote who put these commercials out too, that allowed you to actually hear him in his own words talking to Bob Woodward about someone, and there was one particular one where he talked about someone sneezing and how he himself ran when the person sneezed, right? So that's somebody who admitted that he knew.
Yeah.
Right? Admitted that he knew. That's like the person who has herpes, doesn't tell their partner that they have herpes, spreads it. Or the person who has HIV doesn't tell their partner that they have HIV. That should be considered assault. It should be considered assault with a deadly weapon. It should actually be considered murder, right? And so that's what I consider his behavior. It is the behavior of a serial killer.
Yes.
Quite frankly, it's the behavior. And so because I want him locked up, like his people would say, lock her up. No, I want to see what he looks like in an orange jumpsuit, sitting next to in a cell with a guy named Fleece Johnson.
Just gave a picture there.
And so in critically thinking, right, when all what you just broke down, and this is what I don't understand about his followers, but in critical thinking, he knew about it before it hit the media. He knew how deadly it was, but yet and still him and the rest of his cabinet do not promote, they don't wear masks, they don't promote safety or anything like that. So you know that you're very influential with your followers, and you know that they're going to basically listen to everything that you do and say.
Yep, that's right.
On message, it's bending the curve. It's going away. It's just going to disappear. Poof, just like that, it's going to be gone. You'll see. It's kind of like the flu. But you already knew it was deadly. And this is the message that you're putting out. So are you attempting to kill your followers? Those are the questions that I ask myself.
You know, look, that is, are you attempting to cull the herd? Is that right? Is he attempting to cull the herd? And in fact, they started talking about herd immunity, and I actually began to say, yeah, they're trying to do some culling here. You know, for Jared Kushner to say the things that he said, for people who were Senate confirmed by the United States Senate to behave in the way that they behaved. Look, I wish there was a way to recall them all. You know, but there's also those congressional enablers, you know, in the Republican Party. I've always wondered what he had on them to make them cooperate so fully. What did he have on Lindsey Graham to make Lindsey Graham cooperate so fully with him, or any other Republican for that matter? What did he have on them to make them be so complicit in what is a crime against the American citizens, to allow us to put out a false message and to allow Americans to be killed by a very deadly disease that has an uncommon and uncatchable spread rate, even after he had it himself. You would think that after having it himself, he would say, well, damn, this didn't feel so good to me. And I had the best medicines known to man. I had super steroids that got me back. And you would figure he would have had some empathy towards the American people to say, guys, look, let's fix this. This is serious. It's not about my reelection. It's not about my political campaign. It's not about my legacy. It's about saving the American people. That's a very selfish, very small-minded man who is incapable of thinking about others in that way. But his congressional enablers, look, you can recall them. They can be recalled. They can be, they can be voted out in the next election. They are also complicit in these deaths. Again, don't know what he had on them. Don't know what he currently has on them to make them cooperate and be complicit in, the mass killing of American citizens, the culling of we the people.
Right.
I think that they all have something in common. Like, I think for him, his ego is his currency. You know what I mean? Because he's broke. His name is basically what he makes his money off of licensing. He doesn't really own anything, but his ego is so valuable that.
Oh no, David, I'm very rich. He's very rich. He's very rich.
Very, very, very rich.
very, 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 very rich. Richer than any president to ever hold the office.
Right.
Billions. Pays billions. Pay no taxes. I do my little dance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think his ego is his currency. You know what I mean? He has, as long as he feels good about himself, he'll put anything and anybody at risk as long as he's taken care of, like you said. But as far as like the enablers, I mean, quite honestly, I just think he speaks to their white supremacy. He speaks to it. And it's more important for them to be the chosen race than it is to do the right thing and have equality. So if that means, separating lives where like these people it's okay that they can die. We can afford to lose this many people as long as we're still kings, and I think that's really what it speaks to, the desire to continue white supremacy so much that you'll put lives at risk with your decision making,
Yeah, look, I mean, I think he made it pretty clear where he stood with white supremacy when he told the Proud Boys to stand down and stand by. Stand down and stand by. Really?
Pretty damn clear.
Now he wouldn't tell the Proud Boys, look, here's one thing he wouldn't do. He wouldn't say, hey, Proud Boys, I want you to go and go down into Philadelphia. He wouldn't say to the Proud Boys, hey, take your signs and take your people and go stand on the corner of Caldwell and Wilmington in Compton, California, and do your white power sign. He wouldn't tell them that.
Right. Or come to West Philly.
or come to West Philly. Come to West Philly and and stand outside. No, he's not going to tell them that. He's going to tell them to stand down and stand by and do whatever it is they do. He's not going to stand up for, an incredible governor like Gretchen Whitmer, who militias wanted to kidnap.
Crazy.
And not just Governor Whitmer. People didn't realize it was also the governor of Virginia who was on there. But then he tweets things, that target them all, right? But nobody's really talking about those things in their fullness.
Yeah.
Right? That he was willing to put the lives of duly elected governors at risk because of his own ego, because of his own hubris. And look, hubris brings down a lot of people. Hubris has him really living right now that full 2020 experience where he's got the COVID. He had the COVID. He lost his job and he's about to be evicted.
Yep.
Brilliant.
But I think we all have to continue to fight back and push back against these lies, because a lie told enough times becomes the truth. There is no voter fraud in this country. Every ballot must be counted. And remember, he started off at the end of election night saying, stop the counting, stop the counting, stop the counting. Why? Because he had already been to the end of the book. It's like the Bible, and it's like Revelations in the Bible. He went to the back and he said, damn.
That's how it ends. Right. I like that one.
Yeah, he knew that the whole post office thing didn't work out to how they anticipated. And thank God for the postal workers, because most of them were true Americans. And even in, I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. These people out here, they were going above and beyond and against protocol to make sure that those ballots were getting where they were supposed to go.
Yeah.
True Americans stepped in and they did their due diligence.
Turned up.
Yes,
Bucks County turned up, showed up, and showed out. So thank you all. Thank you all, and thank the good people of Bucks County for turning out in the way that they did, and for putting their ballots in the mail, and for being safe, and for being distant, and for being responsible. We weren't doing super spreader events like he was doing. You can't track a 30% increase in COVID diagnoses, positive diagnoses to anything that we did. You can't track, 130 Secret Service officers, people who are paid to put their lives on the line, people who are paid to take a bullet. They should not have to catch a virus, right? That was never in the job description. But 130 of them have to quarantine themselves because they were subjected and exposed to this virus because this man refused to be responsible.
Yeah. Could one say that the spiking now is partly contributed to him traveling around the country?
His rallies?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, Stanford University actually did a study on it. It's out there. My mother always said, if it's in print, it does exist. You should go and find it. Stanford University did a study on it. Yes, you can say, and it has been said, it has been studied, it has been written, it has been put in print, that the spike is attributed to his rallies, the super spreader events. Dr. Fauci called them super spreader events. Every trusted medical source known to man has said that they were super spreader events, but also the outgrowth of that, because nobody was wearing masks, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody was wearing masks because he didn't want them to wear masks. He didn't tell them to be responsible and to wear a mask. And me wearing a mask is not just because I want to protect myself. Me wearing a mask is because I also want to protect the two of you when I'm in your presence, right? The droplets go both ways, right? I mean, spreading goes both ways. And so let's all be responsible. Let's all wear masks. They have, now they have so many different masks on the market that you can be fashionable in wearing your mask. You don't have to wear them inside your house, but you do need to wear them when you're walking around in your house by yourself, but you do need to wear them when you're out in the public, to make sure that you protect not just yourself, but that you protect your fellow man. And that's what America's all about. It's all about uplifting and helping your fellow man. And so it also has to be about protecting your fellow man and fellow woman. It just has to be that.
So this charge of ours for the Democratic Party moving forward isn't over. We still have some runoffs happening in January. And then even after that, it's still going to be important for people to do their due diligence in voting and staying, keeping to, our fight that we're on right now. Talk a little bit about that and how important that is.
Look, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris have an agenda that they want to move forward with to repair the faults in this nation. Mr. Clyburn likes to frequently quote Alexis de Tocqueville, and who said that America is great not because its people are good, but because it's always been able to repair its faults. And so President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris have an agenda that will help repair those faults. They have an agenda that will help bring back this economy, that will employ people, but that will first kill this damn virus. Right. And so the elections in Georgia are critical to that, because we need working and willing Senate partners. And we think the candidates down there We think they can win, and we hope that they're elected by the people of Georgia, and everybody's going to work damn hard to make sure that that happens, so that we can have a working partnership in the United States Senate that can help us move that agenda along. You know, you've heard him say that he is a proud Democrat, but he's going to govern as an American president, which means he is going to serve and represent not just the people who voted for him, but the people who didn't. Even the people who are out protesting right now, he is going to represent them with every fiber in his being. And he is going to do it honestly, and he is going to listen to them, and he is never going to question their motives. They have to be willing to be partners in that as well. And so that's what these Senate races in Georgia are about. Donald Trump will not be on the ballot. This will be about America will be on the ballot this time in Georgia. COVID-19 will be on the ballot in Georgia this time. Racial equity will be on the ballot in Georgia this time. So those things will all be on the ballot. Georgians have to turn out to vote. They need to mail their votes in. But look, here's the other thing. 26% of African Americans in Georgia voted this last time around, and look at the victory that it delivered. That's not every African American that lives in the state of Georgia, right? And so we've got some work there to do to register some more voters, and then to get them to mail their ballots in. Or if they're going to vote in person, to do it in as safe a manner as deemed possible. So, you know, Georgia's got to show up and show out. Black folks in Georgia have to show up and show out. Good Democrats and people of goodwill have to show up and show out. And look, those moderate Republicans who don't like the direction that Donald Trump took this country, we want your votes too. Show up, show out. Just like you voted for Joe Biden, vote for John Ossoff, vote for Reverend Warnock in this next election.
And to back you up on that, just so that people are aware, even though Trump will be out of the office, Trumpism is probably here to stay for a long time, and we'll probably have to fight it for some time.
Yeah, we will. We will. I think he awakened an ugly underbelly in this nation that had been pushed into silence for a long time. He gave them permission to speak. He gave them permission to wave the flag of a losing Confederate army. He gave them permission to do all sorts of things. But look, that's something that we have to deal with. Hopefully by the works, by the works of President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris, we can turn some of that. Hopefully they can see the sermon that's being preached as opposed to just hearing the words coming out of the mouth. Hopefully they can feel that sermon, and they can feel the benefits of a Biden-Harris economy that will focus on communities that have been left out and left behind, but that will also lift other communities in the process. Look, Trump, you're right. Trumpism should be treated like the coronavirus. After we defeat the coronavirus, we need to defeat Trumpism. We need to defeat that supremacist mentality, that hateful mentality that has permeated and been allowed to raise its head, but permeate these corners of this country so that we can eradicate it just like we eradicate the coronavirus.
Yeah. Over 70 million people voted and spoke and said they wanted 4 more years of him. So that's that's accurate. That's what we have to deal with. Like after coronavirus, we have to attack the fact that literally half of this country is racist, and happy about it.
And David, we also have to ask 54% of white women, what the hell were they thinking?
What was that? What
the hell were they thinking in voting for this guy? I have never quite been able to reconcile why a woman would vote someone who says grab him by the pussy, right? That shows me that he has absolutely no respect for you or anything that you think is good and decent. So, we have to figure out as a Democratic Party what we need to do to reach those 54%. We have to figure out what we need to do to reach that 18% of Black men who voted for Donald Trump, what we have to do to reach that 9% of Black women who voted for Donald Trump, and what we have to do to reach, quite frankly, everybody who was off their damn rocker who voted for this guy. I don't mind you voting for a Republican, right? There are good Republicans out there. There are good, moral, decent people. John McCain was one of them. I would say Mitt Romney was one of them. You know, they both fell short. There are some in Pennsylvania that are good and decent people. Hell, you know, there were good and decent Republicans from my home state of California. And I don't mind a contest of ideas. I don't mind a contest of policies. I don't mind a contest of principles. What I do mind is blind loyalty to a Pied Piper who will lead you off a cliff and then turn his back and walk away as you drown in the tide and break your head on the craggy shoal below. That's what I do mind, and that's what we need to go out and find, communicate to, and fix.
Yeah. Well, that takes me back to the point before, and we can wrap it up. This has been brilliant, man. But when we said before about the value of keeping white supremacy in charge, they will literally chop off a limb or put themselves at risk in order to keep white supremacy, you know, held, which is why I think a lot of those votes did go to Trump. Like you said, for women that would choose to vote for him, knowing that he's you know, they'll grab him by the pussy and all that kind of shit. Like, it was more important that a white person stayed in office and that maybe a Harris didn't come into office. It was more important for them to keep a white man and keep a White House. You know what I mean? And that they would vote.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to adjust. I mean, it's like, do we try to petition to make racism illegal? Like, you go to jail if you do something racist? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is that how it eradicates? Like, how do we go about stopping that, you know?
Racism should be illegal. Racism should be first considered immoral, first and foremost. Should be considered immoral. That, you know, Martin Luther King used to say, you know, we should judge people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. When you watch two little babies come together and play in a park, and we just took Grace out recently to do that. We did it safely. But watch two little kids come together who didn't know each other, who were from different races and possibly even different religious backgrounds. They didn't care. They were just kids. They felt a content of character between them. Yeah. Hey, you're a baby like me. I'm a baby like you. Let's go toddle around and fall and stumble together. I don't know what happens, and maybe it's because there's a fear, you know, in this country that if this person of color rises and becomes a millionaire or a billionaire like Oprah Winfrey or Robert Smith or Neil Youngblood, you know, that takes away from me. No, it doesn't. It should actually inspire you that your fellow American rose and broke out of a caste system and changed classes in the course of a generation. That should inspire you. It's not taken away from you. It's never subtractive. It's additive. It should be inspirational and aspirational. But there are people in this country who feel that as the three of us progress along, that it's taking something away from them. There are people in this country who feel that and we're all articulate, eloquent Black men, that if we move that even the worst of them, if the worst of them, as long as the worst of them is better than the best of us, then they're still the best.
Yep.
That's bullshit. That's bullshit. You know, when you hear shut up and dribble or shut up and play, that statement that I just made before is embedded in that statement. You know, look, I'm a former athlete. I was trained to be a leader by my institution. If I wasn't a leader before, but if I came in, they harnessed and honed those skills. Yes, I'm going to speak out when I see injustice, whether it be an unfair hike in tuition rates or a police officer kneeling on someone's neck until they piss themselves before they ask for their mother, before they die, right? We have to speak up and speak out when we see injustice, but when we see fear permeating, we have to also be able to calm people and say there's nothing to be afraid of. We're just making this country better we're living up to the greatness that it's supposed to be, because it's already great. Its greatness just has to be accessible and affordable so that all can participate, and that we're not taking your slice of the pie away. We're simply making the pie bigger so that everyone can have a piece. And in making it bigger, guess what, genius? Your piece of the pie becomes bigger.
Bigger, yeah.
See, that's what they don't get. It's never subtractive. It's always additive, and we have to continue to add, because if you keep subtracting, sooner or later you've got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I always believe that a percentage of something is better than 100% of nothing, and we have to help those people who are afraid get to that point to where we all are.
Awesome, man. That makes sense.
Well, thank you, brother.
If it's okay with you, Chike, I think we can put a button on this one. This was awesome.
Yes, I just want to say, Mr. Marcus, thank you for such an awesome interview. You're a great interviewer.
Indeed.
Chike,
Yeah,
David, thank you both so much for having me. Look, it's a nice sunny day out there, so put a mask on, go outside, get a little sunshine, bundle up because it's cold. And look, January 20th, 12/31 begins the beginning of a new era for this country, and begins our comeback as a great nation globally. So chip in, help. We appreciate you all. Keep pushing the message out there. Keep telling the truth. Keep challenging the lies wherever they rear their ugly head. Love you both, brothers.
all right. Love you, man.
Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.